Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matty Taus. I'm the lead pastor here at Epiphany Station. And before we dive into our conversation today, I just want to take a little bit of a moment to point out what was going on here yesterday afternoon. Yesterday, we were able to have one of our Life Fest celebrations in which we take the time to celebrate those families who want to dedicate themselves and their children and how they're going to raise those children to know Jesus Christ in front of the church. And we also were able to celebrate alongside those 8 dedications. 8 people were baptized yesterday for the first time in their relationship with Jesus. If you missed the opportunity to be a part of Life Fest, like you had anything better to do, we will be having another Life Fest event in the middle of July, and especially if you're looking to be baptized here at Epiphany, you can put that on your calendar or at least your radar. Now today what we get to do is we get to wrap up this teaching series we've been walking through called Blessed Are the Misfits. This has been an amazing teaching series. I'm a little sad for it to end because what it's given us the ability to do is week in and week out is take quite a direct look at what's wrong with our church culture. What's wrong with the place that is supposed to be the place where people are crafted and built to fit in? What's wrong when we've built places that make people feel misfitting? We've been able to look at things like how we feel about ourselves and the labels that we give ourselves, but also what we emulate and what we really worship here in the church that's just downright wrong. So if you've missed any of the teachings in the Misfit series, you can go to epiphany.com. You can find them under the Watch tab. But today, we get to wrap things up with one of my favorite conversations, and that is why the purpose of the church can be a little bit confusing. And in that confusion can make us feel very misfitting from what God intends to do with you if you want to call yourself part of the church. I don't know what kind of experience you have with church, whether this is your first time or your first time just in a weird church, or if you've been in church your entire life. But there are too many people that I come across and I have conversation with that just don't feel like they ever really truly connect with the church they're going to. Sure, they go there and they would maybe say that they're a member there, but when all the chips fall, it wouldn't really say and own that they're part of what the church is doing, or they even understand what the church is doing. And that's a huge problem, because if we're going to be part of this weird thing called church, then the very least we can do is understand what it is for, so that we don't miss out on an amazing opportunity to be part of something, to fit into something greater than ourselves. Now, when I first started going to church, probably about 9-ish years ago down in Indiana, where church is much weirder than everywhere else, I couldn't wrap my head around like this whole just kind of go to church every now and again and then actually feel excited about it. It was kind of weird sort of sensation of it felt like it was missing something, like something was lacking. And even when I started going to a very weird, really weird church in a gas station about 8 years ago, I started having those same initial feelings while I was attending and while I was going. I mean, I loved the teaching and I loved the worship and I loved the people, but it felt like something was just underwhelming about the whole thing, like I was missing out on something really important. And as I talked to people, I started to understand it. It came down to how we approach what church is and how we approach what it means to us on a personal basis, but also as church family. And to be able to make sure that we're not completely misfitting our purpose here, we need to take a different approach towards what it means to be a part of church. And the approach that I want us to have a look at is what I think is God's approach. When we talk about the church family being the place where you can fit in and you can be part of something, the approach that God takes to be able to allow as many people from as many walks of life to find their place is what we're going to take the time on this morning. See, God has this propensity throughout history to wherever he needs there to be a representation of himself is to create what I call misfit projects. Things that seem to come out of nowhere, where something's wrong, something is underserved, something is lacking. He brings people to bear on that very topic, that very subject, and they find the same cohesive purpose to go on living their lives together by showing people that they love their God and they love the people around them. Now, God's been doing this for centuries and millennia. It's nothing new. He was into Misfits before it was cool. And what he did was he would create these groups of people to see that people would understand and know who he is. One of the oldest visions he has for creating a group of people like this, you'll find it like in the Old Testament, in the old half of the Bible, is when he decided he wanted to create a nation for himself. And he created the United Kingdom, and it will always be God's holy nation. Yep. Boo. Wow. No, he created this holy nation. It came to be known as Israel. It was going to be these people who were going to be God's own. He was going to show off to the entire world what kind of God he was. And they would want so much to be a part of his family because of the representation of these people. Now, they were a ragtag bunch. They were basically a series of weak tribes stitched together that wanted to try and love their God and love people well. But what would happen over time, and time again and again and again, is they would find themselves wandering knee-deep down Fecal Creek without a way of extricating themselves. And they would find themselves in these unique positions to be the blank canvas to which God can bring about one of these misfit projects, to show people what he really cares about and how people like you and I are called to be involved. One of my favorite misfit projects is just a time as this, as Israel, aka the morons in the Old Testament, came to see that they thought it was a much better idea to go their own way, to remove themselves from what God had planned for them and what they were part of. And that basically led them down Fecal Creek. And they found themselves being invaded, they found themselves being conquered, they found themselves being exiled, and everything being torn down and ruined. Many of them having to be taken away to a different country. Those who remained in the capital city known as Jerusalem were living in a ruin. And they became the laughing stock of all the nations. Because to be a nation living in a ruined city, to be in a nation that in your capital city you don't even have protective walls around you, was intentionally done so people could point and laugh. These people no longer have their freedom, they no longer have their identity, they no longer have protection of their so-called God. And that's where we step into this amazing time of God showing what it is like when he steps in with one of these projects. We're going to be in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is way back in the Old Testament. And usually when we talk about, and then God showed up and amazing things happened, usually we talk about, that one man that was raised up to prominence and he had one vision. And if you're going to go and watch one terrible representation in a Hollywood cheesy fashion of a Bible story, this is the one you're going to watch this season. But that's not what happens. In fact, in the book of Nehemiah, there's no hero. There are no angels. There are no miracles. In fact, there's not much mention of God whatsoever. There's just people and God working with people. It starts off with Joe Schmo, the guy called Nehemiah. He gets his name slapped on the book because you have to call it something. You can't just call it the Chronicles of Moronia. But he gets this idea from God, from seeing that there's something wrong. Seeing something wrong with God's people. They've lost their identity. They've lost their ability to stand proud and say who their God is. And God gives him this idea to go and return to the city and rebuild. Specifically to rebuild the wall around it, to show that this is a nation that God protects and that they can stand tall. So he basically has to go to the king who has conquered that nation and his city and ask for permission to leave. And then he asks for supplies to go with, and he asks for safe travel. And then he gets back to his home nation and he gathers everybody around and says, look, it's time to end our disgrace. It's time to fix the thing that is wrong in our city, in our community, and say, yes, are we going to do this? They stand forward and they all say yes. And then what happens is that misfits make history. I want to do something with you this morning that is a little bit peculiar, is I want to read you a large swath of the Bible. Not just a verse, not just a few, but in fact a large chunk to let you know and understand what it means when small people are called to do amazing things. But to make it fun, I want you to try and count with me the amount of names that I say, if you can differentiate them as I butcher the pronunciation over and over again. But in Nehemiah 3, we see what it means for a people to be called to do what God needs them to do in their time. It starts in saying like this as they start the building of the wall. It says, then Eliashib, the high priest, and the other priests started to rebuild at the sheep gate. They dedicated and set up its doors, building the walls as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and the Tower of Hananel. People from the town of Jericho worked next to them, and beyond them was Zakur, son of Imri. The fish gate was built by the sons of Hassanah. They laid the beam, set up the doors, and installed its bolts and bars. Meremoth, son of Uriah and grandson of Hakkoz, repaired the next section of wall. Beside him were Meshullam, son of Berechiah and grandson of Meshezabel. And then Zadok, son of Bana. Next were the people of Tekoa, though their leaders refused to work with the construction supervisors. The old city gate was repaired by Joada, son of Paseah, and Meshullam, son of Beshadiah. They laid the beams, set up the doors, installed its bolts and bars. Next to them were Melatiah from Gibeon, Jadon from Maranoth, people from Gibeon and people from Mizpah, the headquarters of the governor of the province west of the Euphrates River. Next was Uzziel, son of Hariah, a goldsmith by trade who worked on the wall. Beyond him was Hananiah, a manufacturer of perfumes. They left out a section of Jerusalem as they built the broad wall. Raphiah, son of Hur, the leader of half his district of Jerusalem, was next to them on the wall. Next, Jedediah, son of Harumaph, repaired the wall across from his own house, and next to him was Hattush, son of Hashabaniah. Then came Malchijah, son of Harim, and Hashub, son of Pahath-Moab, who repaired another section of the wall and the tower of the oven. Shalom, son of Halesh, and his daughters repaired the next section. He was the leader of the other half of the district of Jerusalem. The valley gate was repaired by the people of Zanoah, led by Hanun. They set up its doors, installed its bolts and bars. They repaired 1,500 feet of the wall to the dung gate. And it goes on, and on, and on, and on. And on 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 and on. And it continues like that, not just in chapter 3, but in chapter 4. And then again in chapter 7, goes on and on and on and on and on. And you should be thankful that I didn't take you through the whole list. But how many names? How many names you get? 42? That's a really good guess. The thing that's going to really mess with you is how many of them were repeated. But you see, there's this long list all the way through chapter 4, and we're going to end it there at the dung gate, where everything should end. But these are names of people you've never heard of before. And probably names of people that you'll never hear of again unless you want to spend some time in Nehemiah 3. Yet these people, thousands of miles and thousands of years from where they lived, are being spoke of this morning. It's being recounted to us who they were and what they did. In a moment in time, a pivotal moment in time of what God was doing, they stepped up. And we see goldsmiths, we see perfume makers, priests and servants, merchants, sons of, daughters of, people of, all from different walks stepping up and saying that they're going to take part in the work that God has in front of them. The very thing that confused me when I started growing up into the church in my early 20s was how much emphasis is put on a person of God. I don't see that. I don't see what's so special about Christianity. I don't see what's so special about our faith in a person of God. I see what's so special in the people of God. That God would pull all sorts and make them part of something unique. That he would make churches out of misfits. And that's what he's been doing, not just with exiled people groups from the Middle East thousands of years ago, but in fact those people who sit alongside you today just wanting to know how to exist. And if we don't understand what God is doing through the church, we will continue to feel misfitting. Because we feel misfitting when we miss how we fit. 1 Peter 2:9 says, "You are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for he called you out of the darkness into his wonderful light." The definition of those people who've come to know God and want to follow him are his people. That we can be part of showing his goodness to others. And there are thousands of different ways for thousands of different people to live that out. So that in the future, 1,000 years from now, we will be the difficult names to pronounce as people recount what happened in communities when people got on board of what God was doing in their time. The biggest problem that we have is I would find that a lot of people who truly love God and love people don't know of the importance of what they're called to be part of the church. And because of that, they misfit and don't miss the entire purpose. If you've ever wondered why you've maybe gone to church for a long time, or you maybe wondered how on earth people get so excited about it, it might be that you're not seeing, not knowing, misfitting on this purpose. Because you see, to sum it up, the church's end game The church's end game here on earth is to make out of every man, woman, and child people who love God and love people. Better and better and better. That is the purpose of Epiphany Station. It's why we do what we do. So we can continue to call people to go and show God's goodness to others. Now, if that's not why you go to church, or that's maybe not what you're for in your life, then maybe this isn't the right place for you. But this is why we church. We church to show that we love God with how we love others. We church to be able to embrace outsiders into community. We church to be able to create family. We church so that we can be part of something. And when something is going on as it is going on here, it means there are walls to build, and there are gates to install, and there are people to love, and there is cares to give, and you can show the goodness of God to others. With the rest of our time this morning, what I want to do is I want to walk you through just some things we see from the example of the people in the book of Nehemiah of what it meant to just get on board with what God is doing. These would be challenges to you if you ever sought to live out what it means to be the church. The first step is to do something. After attending Epiphany Station for about 6 months and just feeling like I was on the bench, I asked the fatal question, is there anything I can do here? And the problem with the question, is there anything I can do here, is it leads you to be then asked to do anything that can be done here. And that morning, I was sharing the morning announcements. This is 6 months ago, me Cloroxing poop off the men's lavatory in this brand new facility. And the reason I show you that is, from going to sharing the announcements to scraping off poop, I've come a long way. I've really branched out and diversified how I serve the church. But when it comes to being a part of something, sometimes we have to just do something instead of nothing. I see a lot of individuals, I see a lot of people pent up with that thing that they're going to do someday, but don't. Or I can't possibly do that because I am not specially gifted in some specific way to be able to. The mission and vision of churches is that we all have places to find that we are called to do something. You, no matter who you were or what you believe, you have been crafted to be part of a church. You have been crafted to be part of a group of people who are loving God and loving people. One of my favorite parts of Nehemiah is verse 32. It says, the goldsmiths and the merchants repaired the walls. Goldsmiths and merchants and priests and servants, all with titles and expectations and special skills, but for one season, they all worked construction. For one season, they put all of their own personal expectations or the expectations of others, and they just got to work. They all became bricklayers so that what God has called and put right in front of them to do, they could take part in, and they could serve alongside together. One of the most exciting things about being part of a church is serving shoulder to shoulder. Is doing something that actually matters and makes a difference in people's lives and eternities with others. You can't get that anywhere else than in the church. The second step to take is to do what's in front of you. If you're looking to know exactly what you're supposed to be doing as part of the church, if you want to be part of it, is to do what is right in front of you. Now, what I mean by this is, what do you see on a regular basis? What catches your eye or your ear? What can you not stop thinking about? What do you find yourself regularly looking at? In Nehemiah, what I love to see is how many times people are building the wall right in front of their own house. You see the priests, they build a wall in front of their own house. You see Zadok, he builds the wall right in front of his own house. It's this idea of taking personal responsibility for what is in front of them. That the good of themselves and the good of the whole community is done when we see what's in front and we attack it. So what do you see? What do you feel? What stirs you up to want to take responsibility? Where do you see a lack of God's goodness being shown? Where do you see injustice? Where do you see a people group or a demographic that needs to be shown that they're loved? Maybe it's a project that you feel like you're supposed to be involved in. Maybe it's a task. Maybe it's a person. But the church really does its greatest work when we're all attacking what's immediately in front of us and taking responsibility for the whole community. The third thing, or the third challenge or step to take, is to do what loves God and loves people. To do what loves God and loves people. So before you start thinking about the short-term mission trip in Aruba to go and minister to the scuba instructors and the golf caddies, you have to start considering instead, where does not only the method of love, but where does that join the motive of love? Where is this not about you? See, there was a time when God sought to show his love to the world by showing it to a bunch of people, by building them a protective wall, to be able to display that these people have identity. That's what he did then. What do you think people need to see now? Wherever you're from, wherever you're coming from today, it might be Thief River, it might be elsewhere, but what do you see that your community needs to know that it's loved by its God? See, the Misfit project that God is doing here at Epiphany Station is a little bit weird. See, we've been called to do something which is creating an environment where people can be embraced into it. You see, our vision is to embrace thousands of outsiders, where people like you and I feel like we can come, we can be here, and we can start a relationship with God no matter where we are or where we're going. That's what we're called to do. That's the project that God has us on, to be able to reach outsiders in a community where it can be tough for them. My question is, does that feel like your job too? Does that feel like what you're supposed to be doing? If not, that's fantastic, because there are amazing other ministries for you to go and pour into, personal one-on-one ministries or other churches where you're crafted to be. We are here for the outsiders. It's why we are here, and it's why we will be here. So one thing I'm going to get to invite you to do is to be part of that. If you call this your church home and this is what you want to do and be part of, I want to invite you to do that. As you walked in this morning, you'll have been handed a green card along with your program. You got your green card a lot quicker than I got mine. This green card is a specific type of communication card that we have at Epiphany, to be able to invite you to be part of the mission that we're on together. I would be willing to ask you unashamedly, if you're not serving at Epiphany Station, if you're not building here, creating here, pouring into here, if you would consider it, if you would pray about it, if you would get more information about it. Do you feel drawn to music, technology, or production? All three of which I'm not allowed to touch with a 10-foot pole. Usually because I touch them with a 10-foot pole and break things. Do you get excited about making things smooth? Do you get excited about things sounding beautiful? Do you love the idea of creating welcoming environments? Did you like the way that you were greeted here as a guest, or think you would like to greet someone better as a guest? Do you like the idea of making a space hospitable, clean, welcoming, warm? Are you amazing at making food? You know where to find me. Do you find yourself wanting to serve and pour into our young families through things like our e-babies or e-kids ministries? Do you have an excitement when it comes to communication, social media, or even teaching? What about what it means to actually host a small group of people as they try and love God and love people better? What about the people that are looking to make steps in recovery from their hurts and their habits and their hang-ups? What about those who want to be discipled, who want to be trained how to follow God? Are you one of those people that just loves people and you want to care for them, you want to pray for them, you want to be for them when they need someone? Maybe you're more of a task-driven individual and you love administration. Maybe you've got a good financial mind. Maybe you're good at helping in benevolence. Maybe you're good at taking care of facilities. Maybe you're good at ministering to teenagers. Maybe you're good with programming large events. See, these are just the ministries that we do here. And small as they be, they are what we do. And they're what I want to invite every single one of you to consider your part to play, to do something, to do what's in front of you. There's no task too small to be able to play our part in welcoming and embracing people here. I just won't make you clean poop off the bathroom floor. That's uniquely my job. Now, ministry at Epiphany Station, is it perfect? No. By no means is it perfect. In fact, it's very flawed because it happens to be led by flawed individuals and lived out by flawed people too. So is it perfect? No. Does it work? Yes. Yes, it works. Because for over a decade, we've seen people embraced here into communities of faith and being transformed inside out. For over 10 years, we've seen hundreds of people come to Christ for the first time, hundreds of people be baptized, families being completely reinvigorated, whole communities of people taking steps in recovery and finding family and belonging. So it works. And as long as it keeps working, it's what we'll keep doing until we find something that works better. The church excels when it knows what it's doing and why it exists. And we know and we believe that we exist to equip and empower you to do what you've been called to do. We, not I, are God's chosen people. We are royal priests. We're a family of pastors able to show much more love to thousands than any staff can. We can show God's love and his goodness to those around us. So I challenge you to take up your green card and consider your part in the mission with us today. Now, to me, it doesn't really matter your views on church, your views on faith, your views on God. I just hope that whatever you've been able to get from our teaching series, Blessed Are the Misfits, has been able to challenge you towards the way that God has intended these things to be. Whether you've caught one of the teachings or all of them, I hope that you understand that you fit into God's family. You might not feel like you specifically fit into Epiphany, and that's okay, but you fit into God's family because all of your misfitting traits are geared to bring you here. All of the things that you feel misfit about you, your misfitting past, your misfitting present, your misfitting mistakes, your quirks, your good side, your bad side. He's drawn people from all over the world, all sorts of social hierarchy and economic strata to be together to show the world that he loves all and can use all. Because when we embrace who we are as misfits, God makes royalty. God makes out of us people who are then able to go and embrace thousands more people. Because for the love of God, people need his church. And for the love of people, we need to take up our part. Would you guys be willing to pray with me, please? Father, we thank you that you are a God of involvement, that you not only want to involve yourself in our lives, but that you masterfully want to use us to then love others. God, help us to be changed. Help us to be used. Help us to find our purpose and place. God, I just want to pray specifically for those who have been burned by church, hurt by church, abandoned by church, even those that have felt that here, that you would please do work, that you would heal those things that we've damaged, and you would show them that they have purpose, that they're uniquely crafted to be part of what you're doing in this city and in our region, and that nothing any person could do could teach them otherwise. God, we thank you that you want to love our city, that you want to love outsiders, and you want to show them that they're loved. Help us to be responsive to you. Help us to see the things that are right in front of us. Help us to see the things that you want us to do. God, help us to be the church. In Jesus' name, amen.